Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's Wednesday. It's 4 o'clock in the UK. It's 11 a.m. in the East, and it's on the hour everywhere in the world. Well, apart from India, where it's half past the hour, but you know what I mean. And most importantly, it is showtime. It is The View from the Top, and we have got an amazing, amazing show for you today. I am so excited. We've got our special guest waiting in the green room. We've got some really interesting subjects that we're going to be talking about. But what's really important is you know how it works. Say hello. We want to know who is out there. So join the conversation. Write in the comments box. Tell us who you are, where you are. Tell us all your news. I'm seeing people come in. I say hi to Steve from Southern California, from Susan from Muggy, Connecticut, from Emily from France, from Versailles. We're getting them all over from sunny Virginia. Hi, Andrew. Drew's coming in from the Bay Area. Oh, it's so exciting. The numbers are creeping up. Becky, of course, is with us. She's in our green room, and we're so looking forward to chatting with Becky in the morning, in a moment, because as you know, today is The View from the Top meets a legend of our industry, the one and only Becky Woods from ADP. And we're going to be getting into a real debate with Becky because there's some really interesting stuff that they're doing at ADP, which is maybe slightly different to what other companies are doing. And we want to share your views on that and see what you think, what you think works, could work in your organization, what doesn't work. We're really going to get into a good old debate today. And the great thing about this show is not only do you get to hear about what's going in the industry, and you get your tax updates and you get your immigration updates, because of course we've got the one and only Julia Onslow-Cole with us for immigration, and we've got Pat Jurgens to talk about tax, but you also get credits. How about that? You get all this fun and you get credits, because we're now approved for credits for GMS and CRP, and many thanks to Lynn Shotwell and all the team at ERC. But you also get credits for Sherman HRCI, and many thanks to Lisa Fontana and everybody at Rocket Mortgage for organizing those credits for us. And what about future weeks? What have we got coming up? Well, we've got some really exciting stuff between now and the end of July. Next week, we've got another Beneva Bite session, and we're going to be talking about Carney. 80 Carney as it's now been rebranded. And it's a live case study with Karen King and Yasmin Mia. And we're going to be talking about how they manage their program. And then the week after that, 28th of July, which in fact is going to be the last show before our August summer break, we've got a show that you really put it in your diary now. You must not miss, because it is so important. On the 28th of July, we've got a show on D&I in mobility, and we've got a really special panel. We've got Cheryl Young from PwC, Michelle Williams from Walmart, Christine Feisen from Zendesk, and Ursula Dyer-Leperoli from KPMG. And they're going to be talking about a really, really important subject. Now, all the evidence shows that there is a huge underrepresentation of Black professionals, both in the global mobility profession and amongst our global assignee populations. In this session on the 28th of July, we're going to welcome 4 leading mobility leaders for a deep dive into their experiences and the issues surrounding underrepresentation in our industry and amongst our assignees. We're going to be discussing what best-in-class companies are doing and how we can all pull together to enhance diversity within our profession and our industry. So please mark that in your diary. The 28th of July is going to be a mega show. Anyway, that's about what we've got coming up. Let's go dive straight into today. And as you know, we always like to start with the one and only Julie Onslow-Cole giving us an immigration update. So let's bring on Julia to tell us a little bit about what's going on in the world of immigration. Julia.
Hi, Brian.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Whenever I talk to you, you seem to be somewhere else. Where are you today?
Well, I was in Paris this morning, and I'm now in Beaune in the Burgundy district. Yes, so I see Andreas said that I'm missing the good weather in Winchester, which is a bit of a shame. And I'm sorry I went in the opposite direction to Emily because I think she's in Versailles. And it's really raining here, but it's nice to be in France.
Okay, well, the love is out there for you. I'm seeing the applause and the hearts. And Julia, I mean, it's like every week's a different country. So 2 weeks ago, you were in the UK. Last week, you were in Dubai. This week, you're in France. Next week?
I'm still in France, and then I'll be back to the UK, and then probably back to Dubai.
So you're basically quarantine dodging at the moment?
I am really, yes, that's true. I'm actually taking the time to be in France so I don't have to quarantine in a hotel in London.
Okay, so let's talk immigration. What are you going to be talking to us about today?
So I just wanted to give you a bit of a roundup on the Middle East, especially as I was there last week and I was talking to the government in the UAE. And I also wanted to thank Marcin Kubrick and Azim Muhuddin for their update. And I also want to give a big shout out to Grace, who's the lovely receptionist in the hotel in Paris, who not only printed me out loads of things this morning, but gave me the only highlighter in the hotel, which was really kind. So I expect they're all struggling in the hotel now. I've taken
shout out to Grace. Grace, you're famous in the mobility industry.
Yeah, she thought that was very funny. I said I'd mention her today. So just to say that in the Middle East, everyone's preparing for this another big Eid holiday, which starts on the 19th of July for a week. And it does mean that, you know, you need to get applications in because there will be quite a big backlog because of this 1 week big holiday. The second thing to say is starting on Monday, it's been really exciting in Qatar because they've resumed allowing people back into Qatar on visas for visitors and business and families. So this is really, really great news. But there's a mandatory travel permit for everyone. That's even if you're from Qatar or your GCC country, and you have to have it through 12 hours before you board the flight. And if you don't have it, you're not allowed to board. So that's really important. And also they have quite a strict policy. So you have to have 2 vaccinations or you're allowed to have 1 if you've had COVID since then and you've recovered. But it's quite strict. So you have to look at all the rules. And I have to say that, you know, I found it myself. The rules keep changing and it's really quite complicated to keep up with the rules. You just have to really refresh all of the sites almost every few hours when you're trying to travel to another country. And I don't know if people are aware, but some countries in Europe are not accepting AstraZeneca as a vaccine if it's an Indian version, because that hasn't been licensed yet in the EU. So there are reports, and we've had clients who've been turned back from Malta because they've got the AstraZeneca Indian variant number, and you will know because of the number on your vaccination. And you know, my husband and I were in quite a difficult position because we'd had 1 vaccine in the UAE and 1 in the UK, and again that's quite difficult. So I think that it's quite a tricky situation on travel, because really no one expected when they rolled out the vaccine program that people would be so heavily reliant on it. And I think one tip to say as well is that people are having trouble coming from the UK because our vaccinations are denoted on the app. And you can actually apply for a certificate, which takes 5 to 10 days. And that might be worth everyone who's had vaccinations in the UK actually getting that paper certificate. Because another thing that happened to us is that the NHS site went down at one point. So we weren't able to have to show that vaccine. And another thing that is we've had clients refused because because they can't show a certificate. So all of these are little top tips for travel.
But let me add to that tip, actually, something I've done personally is that if you have got a vaccine certificate, apart from the app, is get it laminated.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Last a bit longer.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. Yeah, also it looks more official, doesn't it? So the other thing to say on the UAE is that there's news for golden visa holders. And I was lucky enough to be granted by the government a golden visa earlier in the year. And I must say that the entry on the UAE for golden visa holders is just simply amazing. From getting off the plane, it was literally less than 45 minutes to when we were in the hotel. It's just such a smooth, smart entry. And what they are doing now is clarifying rules for working for golden visa holders. So the latest announcements in the last week was that if you were working outside of one of the free zones, then you could be issued with a work permit. So that's, another thing. And all the time that the Dubai government in particular is working tirelessly to make sure the experience is really good for people and the categories are really good for people. So the other thing I wanted to say was about Oman. They've introduced this investment residency program, which is offering a 5 or 10-year renewable residence permit to investors. And that's something we're seeing regionally. In Saudi Arabia, there's been a lot of changes to the Nitaqat program, and that's Saudiization. So I'm sure everyone will realize this, and that they, that you need to have a quota for employees in Saudi Arabia. And this new system will be slightly better in that it will be gradually your quota will be changed depending on your head count. So there won't be these dramatic fluctuations. And also they're trying to rationalize the industries down from 85 to 32. So it's a bit more easy to understand. And then the final point is that there has been a lot of fraud in the region in relation to visa stickers. And so these are all being improved, particularly in Bahrain, the UAE, the residency visa sticker, including additional security features. And then in the UAE, the Emirates ID card is also being updated, again, to stop fraud.
Okay. So we'll move on, Julia, onto tax in just one second. Just take Emily's question. Yeah. Do you know if the waiver of quarantine rules for travel into the UK from the US is only for UK residents or citizens returning from an amber list country who've been vaccinated by the NHS?
Well, just quickly, Emily, the rules normally apply for people who've been in those countries. It's regardless of whether you're a UK resident or whatever. It's actually whether you've physically been in the country. So I can take a look more leisurely at your whole question, but that's how the rules apply. It's really not what nationality you are. It's really where you physically have been. Which is why, a lot of people who want to go to the US, go to another country and wait out days there, which is why I'm waiting out in France and waited out before in the Maldives. Okay, so thank you for that, Julia. What we're going to do now is we're going to say goodbye to you, sadly, although we will see you, of course, next week in indeed the same country. Yes. And we'll be bringing on Pat. So please, audience, you know how it goes. Let's get the applause out there. Hit those buttons, hit the heart buttons, hit the applause buttons, hit the like buttons. Say goodbye to Julia, and let's bring on the one and only expat Pat. My old friend, I've left you on stage. How embarrassing for all of us. Bye-bye, Julia. Bye.
Can't get enough of Julia.
And I thought I was a professional. There you go. They found me out. To think I'm human. Pat. Anyway, good to see you. Good to see you.
Nice to see you, Brian.
So, Pat, how's it going?
Doing well. Been kind of busy, but certainly have not been doing the traveling like Julia has. A little jealous on that point, but hopefully soon.
But you're still in it's Melrose Highlands, isn't it?
Yes, Melrose Highlands. It's a suburb of Boston. So yes, love my neighborhood. Good times here.
Okay, so tell us, Pat, what are you going to talk to us about today?
I wanted to talk about the tax implications of commuter arrangements. And it's because we at Air Inc. are getting a lot of inquiries from our clients about commuters. And, even more so now that Air Inc. has released a commuter benchmark survey last year, provided some insights to our clients on that. And just last month, we released a commuter package on our assignment cost estimator tool. So we may be one of the few out there that provides an automated online cost estimation tool for commuters. So, I think commuter arrangements are just gaining more popularity as people are getting back onto the global mobility bike, so to speak. So
that's happening. We're seeing commuter assignments come back. Yeah,
that's right. So, think of remote workers, 100% at home, being on one end of the spectrum, and a full-blown expatriate assignment on the other end. Then, commuters are somewhere in the middle. And, especially where commuters have one foot in each country, their resident country, and then where they're, assigned to work, it just makes it much more interesting. So how would you define a commuter, Brian?
Oh, I would define a commuter as someone who travels cross-border to another place of work, but returns back on a regular basis, maybe weekly or so.
Right. So, a lot of it has to do with what is the pattern of commuting. And then also just how long, what's the intended length? So it'll be a little bit different in some cases where you have a commuting arrangement that's indefinite, that, it's not just for a short period of time. So that does make the tax rules all that more interesting from that perspective. And so I just wanted to mention some of the things that you potentially can get into where you do have the home and the host trying to tax that same person. So home country, they're still resident there, so they're likely still taxed on a worldwide basis. And then the work location, the host country, where some of the compensation is earned, maybe not all of it, just based on work days, sourcing of the compensation based on work days. And so that makes it tricky when the host country will have their own rules as to the thresholds. When do they become taxable? When do they become a tax resident? Usually over 183 days or something along those lines. So you really do need to focus on the commuting schedule, on counting of days, not just the days of work, but also the physical presence days, and looking at that on a cumulative basis so that you are addressing what the tax results would be. Fortunately for us in the tax business, there are some tax concessions that we can apply to commuters. Here in the United States, we have what are called reciprocity agreements between two U.S. states, and that will typically limit the taxation to the resident state. So the work state is, you are exempt from paying tax in the work state, so that's kind of nice. So example would be residents of Virginia or Maryland that go into the District of Columbia to work. They don't pay DC tax. They only pay the resident state tax. Another exemption would be frontier workers, primarily a concept in Europe, which I'm sure you're familiar with, the cross-border arrangements where there's a bilateral agreement as to who has the right to tax that commuter individual. Usually it's the resident state, just like reciprocity agreements, but it's all based on whatever the agreement says. Some of them do say only taxed in the work state and exempt at home in the resident state. So it makes for an interesting analysis. And you do need to keep up with the tax rules there.
And you've got a document out about this.
Yes, we do. We have a new package that does cost estimation for that. And then, of course, there's treaty relief that's potential, the infamous 183-day rule. That's the dependent personal services article. usually for short-term assignments. And then there's also a separate article in most treaties called the Treaty Tiebreaker Rule. And that has to do with when you've met the local requirements to be resident in both countries. You spend more than 183 days, say, in the host country, but you're also still resident home. You're resident in both. So the language of those articles allows for one of those countries to win as the resident state. Typically, it'll be the home country, as you could well expect, but it's based on factors such as where your family's living, where you regularly live, where's your home, where is your central of vital interests, and the like. So we would typically expect that the home country would be the resident country using the treaty tiebreaker rule. But the host country will still try to tax the income. They'll just now be the non-resident sourcing state for assessing tax on that wage that's earned when they are commuting to the host country.
And I see Richard has said, does it ever happen that both states or countries want full tax or even neither? You talked about the tiebreaker. And Rob Zeitz, bless you, Rob, says the treaty tiebreaker isn't penalty kicks. Can we just not talk about penalty kicks? For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, don't want to talk about it.
Oh, that's so, Rob. That's so appropriate. Well, yes, but to the question, yes, it's possible that you would have two countries trying to tax the same amount of income, and you are then looking for double tax relief, either through treaty or claiming some sort of relief on the home country resident return. Usually that's a foreign tax credit. Maybe it's exemption with progression. That's a special concept, but it makes the income that's earned in the host country exempt at home. So yes, all these different ways to try to mitigate the double taxation. So it makes for an interesting tax consultation with the commuter. So key takeaways on this is certainly I'd want our listeners to consider whatever corporate tax implications you might have. There's other non-related tax issues, obviously immigration, making sure there's health cover in both locations when they're in both working in both locations, and making sure that you've got the payroll set up properly. Certainly something Becky would know about. Usually you're deciding whether you're going to continue paying in the home country, shifting payroll to the host country, or maybe doing a split payroll. That may make most sense. And then you just got to track all those commuting days. You've got to track the commuting schedule and try to look at when triggers are being hit for tax purposes, and making sure that you're also addressing Social Security issues, because the tax rules and the Social Security rules never really line up very well. So all makes for an interesting challenge.
I think it's one we're going to have to come back to and talk a lot more on, because it is such a big area. I mean, to be honest, I hadn't been thinking about commuters for quite a while because nobody's really been moving, but
Right.
That's now coming back. You mentioned Becky, and we're now going to bring Becky on. And obviously, Becky is with ADP, so definitely knows a thing or two about payroll. And this time, I'm going to try and remember to take you off stage, Pat. So
Okay. All right.
let's see if I can work the technology right this time. Anyway, audience, let's give it up. We've got the legendary Becky Woods coming onto the show. So hit those heart buttons, hit those green applause buttons, hit the blue like buttons, and let's give a good old-fashioned, the view from the top welcome to Becky Woods. Becky, hi, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. I think LinkedIn has just exploded. I don't know if you saw the hearts and the love and the applause coming up there. Just wonderful. Just great to have you. And it's just great to see you. And I know people are really wanting to hear all about you. How are you, Becky?
Good, thank you. I'm very excited to be on the show as well, Brian.
Cool. It's just great. And where are you at the moment?
In New Jersey, right outside New York City.
So you're at home?
I'm at home today, but I am actually back to office.
Okay, well, we'll get into that in a bit, this whole back to office stuff. But I put up a couple of photos in that opening video, and a bit about that was about you. So I just want to find out a bit. Tell us about your career journey. Where did you grow up? Where was home? Tell us your life story, the short version.
The short version. So I was born in upstate New York. I grew up in Delaware. And then when I went to university, I moved up to Massachusetts and attended Amherst College. I know one of the pictures you showed was actually from my days at Amherst, from my basketball team. And
hang on, we can do that. Here's Becky in her college sports day. Which one's you, Becky?
Back row, offset, the very tallest girl on the team. I'm to her left when you're looking at
number
it.
31, is it?
That's right. Yep.
Hey, okay. And were you a successful basketball player?
I'm sure, definitely. I would say so.
Yeah, go for it. Go Team Becky.
No, it was a lot of fun and definitely, obviously, playing sports, I'd say, gives you the opportunity to learn about teamwork and perseverance and being agile and all those great things that I continue to, use on an everyday basis.
Okay, so that was good. And you were at Amherst, obviously a very well-regarded college. What did you study there? What was your major?
Spanish. It was a double major, Spanish and law, jurisprudence, and social thought. Because at that point in time, I thought, maybe I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. Okay,
and you obviously failed miserably. You decided not to become a lawyer. So why aren't you a lawyer? What happened? Why aren't you a Spanish-speaking lawyer somewhere in wherever? What happened?
Which does sound really cool. So after I graduated, I moved to New York City and I did work as a litigation paralegal at a law firm in Midtown. And I really enjoyed the experience. But through that experience, I realized law wasn't something I wanted to do full time. So I said, maybe at best I explore another career opportunity and so shifted gears a little bit.
Okay, so what happened then?
So then I said, what would be really cool? I'd love to go live and work in another country. And
so mobility was coming into your blood at this point. You decided that you wanted to go traveling. You had the bug, and where did you settle on? Obviously because of the Spanish, I wanted to go somewhere Spanish speaking. I had studied abroad in Spain at the University of Granada when I was at Amherst. So I said, why don't I go try somewhere else? So I started exploring Latin America, and I truly started exploring. I thought, okay, what countries are safe to go to, for a single woman, and where are they, welcoming to Americans? Where could I easily get a job? So I spoke to a lot of different people from different countries and eventually settled on Costa Rica. And my family decided, let's go take a family vacation down there so we can see what it's like. So we did that. We all went down and toured around. And then my family left and I stayed an extra week. And I myself went to a few different English teaching centers. And through that, actually, one of them, I went to the Centro Cultural Costarricense Norteamericano in San Jose. I just went in and I sat in the cafeteria and I started chatting with another American, and he was teaching there. So we connected and I got his information. So when I came back to the US, I said, that felt really good. I had a great experience. I think this is what I want to do. So I packed my bags and I went and I actually contacted that person I had met in the cafeteria and said, do you know anywhere to live? And he said, well, I rent a home. I rent a room in a home from a local Costa Rican. I'm moving out. You could take my spot if you want. And I said, so
great.
It's a real self-managed move.
Exactly. I did my own household goods shipment. I did my own home finding. It all went very well.
Okay, now I've got a photo of you here. Let's see. Let's put it up.
Yep.
There you are. Is that a family picture?
Yeah, that's in San Jose, and that's one of the teachers that I taught with, who became my friend in the school where I ended up getting a job at the Centro Cultural. So I taught English. So because I said, I need to make money. And again, what do I want to do with my life? I'm not just here to practice Spanish. I thought maybe I want to be a teacher. So let's try this out. So I did that for about a year and a half.
Okay. So first of all, you were going to become a lawyer, and then you moved on. Then you become a teacher, and that obviously moved on from that. So how did you get into mobility?
So from there, and by the way, I love these discussions because I feel like everyone gets into mobility in such a different way. So it's so fun to hear all different ways.
Yeah.
So as I decided, okay, maybe I don't want to teach on a daily basis. What do I want to do? I said, one of the things I really liked about law and teaching was, you're a subject matter expert. People come to you for your expertise, for your advice. And I said, what professions kind of like that, where you get to work with people and do that sort of counseling? And I said, HR is kind of like that. I said, I think I'd really like to explore a career in HR. But at this point,
you really thought it through.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You thought through your options. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I truly did a career journey. But I said, I've never worked at a traditional corporation. I don't even know what that's like. I said, I better go get my MBA. So while I was living in Costa Rica, I started applying to a few different schools, and I actually ended up at Thunderbird, which is a global MBA program out in Arizona.
Okay, I don't know how well known that is outside the US. So tell people a bit about Thunderbird.
Yeah, Thunderbird's a pretty unique school. It's always just been a global master's program. There's no undergraduate associated with it. More recently, it's been folded into Arizona State University, but it used to be a standalone school. It was founded by returning Air Force soldiers from World War II who said, we just had this international experience. We learned a lot. Some made connections. They said we'd like to be doing business cross border, and a lot. So they founded the school on the Air Force base, and a lot of them started to get into things like import export and those types of jobs. So the students are over 50% international. The faculty is mostly international, and there's a cross-cultural component built into every course, like even statistics, for example. So it's pretty unique curriculum.
Okay. And what's this I've got here? Awarded, this is for Costa Rica, awarded friendliest country in the world award at one point. But anyway, so you were at Thunderbird, then you got into mobility itself.
Yeah, so I was able, through a local SHRM chapter in Arizona, to get an HR rotational internship in the summer between classes. And that was neat because I got the opportunity to do a little bit of work with the staffing department and benefits and compensation, total rewards, and the international piece. And I said, you know what? I really would love to focus on the international piece of HR. So then I said, well, what does that even mean? There's different types of careers within international HR. So again, I started doing a little more research, and there are a lot of cross-cultural trainers that come out of Thunderbird. So I spoke with a few of them. I learned about DSP services. And I learned about the RMCs, relocation management companies, because at that point, a few of the companies had relocated to Scottsdale, Arizona, right down the street. And a few Thunderbird alum actually worked at what was then Prudential, Prayers, the Prudential Real Estate Relocation Services. So that's where I actually ended up getting my first job out of Thunderbird, was on the RMC side.
Okay, so that was your when. Now, something else actually people may not know about you, and then we're going to move on to talking about ADP in the program, is that you've got identical twin boys, haven't you?
That's right. Yes.
I've got a picture of them. Let's just see. Where are we? Here we go. Ethan and Logan.
That's right. Yep.
How do you tell them apart?
So luckily for us right now, they have different hairstyles, so it's pretty easy. But when you see them from the back, if they don't have different hairstyles, it's pretty tough. And it was funny when we brought them home from the hospital, the doctor said, it can be a problem with identical twins. Once you take their hospital bracelet off, a lot of parents can't remember who's who. They said, so you should paint one of their fingernails so you can remember which one's which. We don't have to do that anymore, but it was a good trick in the beginning.
And you've been obviously, like many other people, homeschooling for the last year. So you've had your class of 2 that you've been looking after whilst working at the same time.
Yes, it's been a joy now that school's done and summer camp's in session, and I think we're all very excited about that. But it was another journey the last year and a half.
Okay, so I mean, as Susan says, adorable boys, and I think it's really nice in our industry to get to know people, not just as professionals, but the human side of everybody and the family side. But I suppose we ought to talk about work. So let's just talk about ADP and your program. I think many people will know ADP. I know you were founded, was it over 70 years ago?
That's right. Yeah. 72 years.
I mean, that's a long time ago for a data company, a data processing company, because it was called automated data processing, wasn't it? Before
Correct.
It became the initials. Okay. And tell me, I mean, how big is the company? Tell us a bit about it.
So we're about 58,000 associates in about 35 countries. Obviously, we service our clients in more countries than that, but that's where we have our own associates sitting in about 35 countries.
Yeah. Okay. And let's get into talking about mobility at ADP. I mean, what's your program like? I mean, tell us about how you run the program. Well, tell us volumes first of all.
Yeah. So I oversee the global mobility program, meaning anything cross-border, as well as U.S. immigration. And then I have a counterpart, and she and I co-manage a department, and she runs our U.S. domestic program, as well as our real estate services affinity program. So all in all, my team on the global side, we have about 15 long-term expats out on assignment at any given time. And then around 40 permanent transfers a year in a normal year, if you will. And then
let's forget 2020. Let's just talk normal years. Yeah.
Right. And then a short-term training program, which we call our ambassador program, which also sends out about 40 a year for very, very short-term assignments. And then on the U.S. domestic side, about 160 a year we have going within state to state in the U.S.
Okay. And do you have other domestic programs like an India domestic program or not really?
No, if we're doing moves like within a country and it's a new hire, usually the talent acquisition group in that country will manage those. We're not involved with any other intra-company move.
Okay. So in total, you're moving about 100, 150 internationally and about a couple of hundred domestically in a year, there or thereabouts. And how big's the team?
Yeah, so we've got on the global side, not the U.S. immigration, just the corporate relocation side. We have 4, that includes myself. And then on the U.S. domestic teams, same, about 4. And, the reason that we're a bit on the larger side is because we do run an in-house program. So we do not outsource many of the mobility management pieces of the moves. We have our own in-house mobility counselors coordinating directly with our household goods shipment vendor, our DSP, our immigration vendor, et cetera.
Okay, I really want to get into this, and I really want the audience to get involved here. I'm looking for feedback from the audience because the big debate, I put a post on LinkedIn a couple of days ago. I did another one this morning. And the question I asked is, rather flippantly, is, are you an innie or an outie? And I'm not talking belly buttons. I'm not talking Brexit. I'm talking in-house or outsource. And, there's arguments either way. But one of the questions I asked, and I'd be interested in know people's views, is this. How much should you outsource? Should your philosophy be to outsource as much as possible, or should your philosophy be to outsource as little as possible? I think, Becky, from what you're saying, you're in the second camp there. Your philosophy is to keep control of as much you can and outsource as little as possible. Would that be fair to say?
That's definitely the ADP philosophy. That's definitely how we've run the program over 20 years, and where we continue to foresee how we are going to manage our program is to continue to mostly insource.
Okay, well, let's see what the audience says. It takes, from the time we talk for it to come through, it takes a couple of minutes for audience reaction to come through. So, I mean, Mary's asked, what technology do you use to manage the program?
Yeah, and it's a great question, because I know a lot of companies that leverage an RMC can use their technology. So we've had to explore our own technology solutions. We do use an expense provider, a tax expert, to help us manage all the comp accumulation and the expense reporting. So we have an outside partner for that. And then we did implement an assignment management software that we use to help the internal team manage the program.
Okay, so I know we're not going to talk about specific vendors. I think it's inappropriate in a place like this. But here's a question from Christina. She says, how do you manage your suppliers and ensure you're getting the best teams in place?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's been manageable for us, because we've got pretty common lanes of where we're moving people. So the vast majority of my associates in international transfers are going to about the same, 10 or less locations. So at this point, we've got a pretty well-defined supplier network of companies that we've used for many, many years. And we've developed very strong relationships with them. A lot of companies have procurement departments that say you really need to evaluate your supplier network, every 3 years, every 5 years, whatever it may be. And I'm always, keeping my ear to the ground to see, what is the new technology? What are other people doing? Are we still doing what's best, right? You don't want to just stay with what you've always done just because you've always done it, right? We want to make sure that we're always continuing to look at the best, and we'll shift if we need to, if something's not working. But I'd say, we've had one provider in place literally for over 20 years, and they've grown as we've grown, and they've matured, and they've updated their technology, and it's just the customer service is so top notch for us. We know that we're getting the right support, but it is something we're always looking at to make sure that the support and the structure is where we need it to be.
Okay, and let's look at some of these comments that are coming through. Mark O'Reilly, hi Mark, he says, company culture and HR service delivery model. For me, it makes sense to outsource high volume, repetitive mobility tasks unless you have super duper tech. I mean, and I'll just put in some other comments here. Here's from Trish McDonald, a mix of both depending on the service, and from Bernard Anderson, depends on the size of program, the maturity of the program, and your company culture. It seems to me, there's certain things that everyone is going to outsource. So, for example, the shipping of household goods, very few companies are actually going to ship the goods themselves. Tax services typically are going to be outsourced. Very few companies have got the tax expertise in-house to do it. Immigration, it may well be you can do some of the visa work in-house, and others you'll use. But I think the big area, and it's probably the area where I think you're most focusing on, is this whole question of vendor management. And that's the area that, should you use an RMC to manage your vendors, or should you manage your vendors yourself? And I think what you're saying is your philosophy at ADP is very much, we will manage our vendors ourselves to the extent we can.
Yeah, and it was interesting on the last comment, the last thing said company culture, right? And what's very important at ADP's company culture is a high associate experience. So we want them to be getting the best service possible. And it's interesting, I've been in a lot of corporate benchmarking forums, and we've talked about this, and we say, how do you ensure that the end user, your relocating associate, truly is getting the best service, right? If you're working through a third party, you want to make sure that they really are seen as an extension of you. And so, people say, oh, I regularly have calls with my suppliers, so we're synced and we're aligned. And I know that when they're speaking, they're my mouthpiece. They're really saying what truly aligns with my company and my values. And then you also see it in the programs where they have vendor directed through their RMC, right? So they say, okay, I'm going to use, please RMC, coordinate my household goods shipment, but I want you to use this household goods shipment vendor because you've developed a relationship. You're going to get the service that you're expecting. Your employees will get the experience that they're expecting. So there's different ways to still achieve having high customer service. So again, I think it comes down to your company culture and how much control do you personally want over it.
Okay, I'll just put a couple of other comments in here. Here's from Eric Halverson, lately of eBay. Companies that utilize and stress headcount metrics will outsource as much as possible. Scaling and flexing is easier by outsourcing as well. Eric actually is one of our Benevo ambassadors as Strategy Council members. Let's hear your comments on that.
Yeah, and I have an interesting case study on it because, like I said, the way our department is structured is we have the global mobility team, and then we have the U.S. domestic mobility team, and then we have a real estate services affinity program where we do provide real estate services to our U.S. and Canadian associates. So if you're just an employee that wants to buy or sell a home, you're not going through a corporate relocation. But if you'd like help buying or selling the home, you can actually work with one of the colleagues on our team to get some expert advice with that. So what happened during COVID was obviously we did not have as many corporate relocations, so volume was down. But we know in the US, a lot of people were buying and selling homes. So our real estate services team was really, really, really busy. So all of our mobility managers on all of our teams, we actually are all real estate agents. And so we were all able to take the heads that normally would have worked on corporate relos and shifted them. And they were able to help on a temporary basis support our real estate services team.
I'm going to comment that you've said some stuff here, which is so radical. I just want to sort of just pick on it and just deconstruct it bit by bit. Just bear with me. I should say, actually, before I do, I just want to comment on this question of outsourcing versus insourcing. We actually asked the audience in a poll during the week, how much should you outsource, as much as possible or as little as possible? And the results we got were, it was 63% said you should outsource as much as possible, and 37% said as little as possible. And clearly, you're in that second category, but it shows there's actually quite a big divide there. I mean, it's not exactly 50-50. I mean, there's a clear majority towards outsourcing, although I suspect a fair few people responding to the poll were themselves service providers who might have a vested interest in outsourcing, but who knows? But it's interesting. But what we've got there is a clear philosophical split. But the other thing I wanted to get onto, and because it's something that you do, you said that all your team are licensed realtors.
Correct.
So you've actually got, I mean, and this is unusual, I think. I don't know if anybody else does this, but you've actually got an in-house brokerage.
Right. Yeah.
Tell us about that. I mean, that's, I look at that, I thought, wow, that's new. Tell us about it.
Yeah, and I think I have heard of one other company that does it. I can't recollect which one. So we're not the only. However, I think it is pretty rare. ADP is actually registered as a real estate brokerage company. And we do have a broker of record on our staff. And like I said, real estate agents on our staff. And what that enables us to do is collect referral fees on certain real estate transactions, things like that. So there's a way for our department to bring revenue into the company.
Okay, so, and I actually sort of alluded to this in a LinkedIn post, but so you could actually consider mobility as maybe a profit center is too strong, but certainly moving towards a profit center.
Right. That's
what you're trying to do. Are you trying to then expand it so that, other people moving, maybe not through mobility, just people moving house generally, you're putting them through your team and getting referral commissions on them? Is that how it works? Right.
Yeah, that's the idea. And I know one of the debates around insource and outsource, and somebody put it in a comment, was around headcount restrictions, right? Mostly at companies, you're always hearing about, we need to reduce headcount. Headcount's the most expensive cost at a company. And so a way that we can offset the cost of our in-house department is by bringing in some revenue.
Okay, I'd be interested to know what other people think. I mean, do other people think that mobility could be a profit center, or if not a profit center, a reduced cost center because of referral commissions? Other people are doing it. Here's a question for you. Any issues with conflict of interest if your team is acting as the broker?
No, because we are actually referring people out to a real estate broker. So we do work with an RMC on a minimal basis for the true kind of nitty gritties of those real estate transactions. So we are handing it off. It's just there's a referral fee component.
Okay. And other comments on, let me just see what else we've had. With my immigration provider hat on, outsource as much as possible. That might be an exclamation mark at the end. And so others here, Tracy, outsource as much as possible. Comment here from Robert, employee experience is guaranteed to be optimal when the internal GM experts control service delivery according to company culture, especially when the corporation highly values their employee-centric culture. Do you agree with that statement? I think I could probably argue that one both ways, but interested in your views.
Well, and so what is interesting is, like I said, my first job out of Thunderbird was with Prudential. I was an international assignment manager. After that, I went to a company called Expatacor, which does both expat payroll, local national payroll, as well as assignment management services. And that was actually where I met Pat and Air Inc. So a longstanding relationship with them. But advising clients, right, on their policies and programs. So again, I was still on the supplier side. And one of my largest clients, they had outsourced their assignment administration to Expatacor, and I was the lead on their account. And I was the mobility manager. I was the one coordinating all of their moves. And they would give feedback to the head of compensation who ran the program. And they said, Becky's great. We love Expatacor. They're doing a wonderful job. But sometimes it would be nice to just be able to talk to a colleague. And they heard that feedback over and over, and they did eventually bring the program in-house. And then eventually I shifted to the corporate side, and I worked at News Corp, and we had a much smaller relocation program, separate from Rena Montalvo's Dow Jones program, which is one of the business units of News Corp. I was at the corporate head, so we had a small relocation program, but we did partner with an RMC. But then, obviously, when I shifted over to ADP, I got that experience and have the experience of being on the in-house side, and I would say, having been on both sides, I felt like when I was at Expatacor, I was really servicing these people as, again, an extension of how my client wanted them to be serviced and kind of speaking with their voice. But there is something to be said for, we are one ADP. You are talking directly with ADP. So when we're talking about your move and talking about the policy and what kind of exceptions are there, they really feel like they're hearing it kind of from the horse's mouth versus kind of through a third party, and things might get lost in translation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's certain things that you will want to outsource. I mean, at the end of the day, ADP itself, I suppose, effectively is an outsourcing company. People outsource their payroll to ADP. So philosophically, there must be some level of interest in outsourcing because that's your own business. But payroll is actually a very mechanistic process, and it's not a huge employee experience process. I appreciate it's not a good experience if you don't get paid correctly. But that aside, as Lisa said, it's a back office activity. In-house, I mean, that's a great point, Lisa Daub. Outsource back office activities, in-house employee-facing activities. And I suppose that raises a question when we're looking at mobility, is how much of what we do in mobility is employee-facing and how much is back office?
Right. Yeah. And you'll see a lot of companies where they've got even mobility strategy broken out from mobility operations, I think for that very reason.
Okay. I mean, that's been absolutely fascinating. I'm going to move the conversation on to a different subject. I mean, you did say that the ADP has been back in the office and that you are back in the office. So let's just talk about return to office. I'd be interested to know in the audience, maybe just let me know in the comments box, how many of you are currently working from home and how many of you are currently in the office? I mean, literally right now. how many people are literally right now in the office, and then also feed in perhaps, what percentage are you going to be in the office or working from home? But Becky, how's it working at ADP? How in the office are you, and how at home are you?
Right. So the eventual plan, our new norm, if you will, is 4-1. So 4 days in the office, 1 day at home. And what we've done is in the offices where it's safe to do so globally, people managers started going in June 1st, 2 days a week. And then this month it shifted up to 3 days a week. And next month you'll be at your 4 days a week. And then all associates, again, in the offices that are open due to safety, started going in actually this week. So they're 2 days this month, 3 days next month, and 4 days after that. So the idea is basically by September, just about you'll have the vast majority of people back in offices.
Okay, and why is that? What's the cultural thinking behind it?
So ADP it's a very kind of open door culture, very collaborative. A lot of decision making is done after you've engaged with a lot of different types of stakeholders. And our CEO has said since the beginning of COVID, our expectation is when it's safe to do so, we expect to see you back in the office. We had already in the past a very mature, we call it our U.S. Home Shored program, where we could, if we wanted to, hire somebody to work full-time from home, but it was a very small program. And what we're saying now is that program continues. The intent is that it will be a small program. New hires, existing associates, the idea is you need to be affiliated with an office and return to that office.
Okay, and are people allowed to work from home cross-border? Do you have a program around that?
So we put in place some guidelines during COVID, just for a temporary basis, right? If you have right to work in another country, you can work there, barring no other compliance issues, for up to 4 weeks a year.
This is your temporary remote worker program.
Correct. Yeah. And
so tell us about that.
Yeah, and the intent is really more around: are you on holiday somewhere? You're visiting your family. You want to extend it for a week or two, right? That's who we're trying to accommodate with the guidelines. We had always said this is just temporary. It's during COVID. As soon as globally everyone can return to office safely, we will reevaluate if we will continue to have this program or not. Because I'd imagine at this point, it's getting quite popular, and people are going to want to continue to do this even after there's COVID's not as big a player.
Okay, because the big debate when this started was people were talking about the new normal, and was work going to change forever in terms of working from home being much more acceptable. But I think what I'm hearing from you and from some others, although there are a lot of people in the audience who are saying differently, is that actually the pressure is coming from the employers to get people back into the office. Bit by bit, they're turning the screws and getting people into the office, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week. And, until, as you said, you're looking at a 4-1 ratio, which is, that's 80% in the office, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is more aggressive than what I'm hearing other companies do. But it could just be we're trying to get everyone adjusted and accustomed to the idea of starting to return. I am curious to see if how much fallout there will be. Obviously we know the job market's hot right now, right? There's a lot of people switching jobs now. So it will be interesting to see is there any kind of long-term impact to the return to office strategy. But for now, talking with all of my colleagues, we're on board. And a lot of us, right, we miss our colleagues. We want to go back in. We do want to see people. So we are very excited for that.
It's interesting. I suppose at the end of the day, it's going to be a real economic decision as to who wears the boots in this. Is it the employer? The employer can say, you've got to go back and work in the office. But the employees may turn around and say, well, actually, I'll go and get a job with somebody else. And where I can work from home. And I know, I won't mention names, but I know, 3 or 4 people, mobility directors in our industry, well-known names, are people who've recently moved job, and they've moved job without moving desk. they're still at home, but they've moved from being the global mobility director of company A to the global mobility director of company B. And in many cases, they started work there. They've been there for weeks or months, and they've probably never once even been into the office, their new office, because it might be hundreds, maybe even thousands of miles away.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see what kind of the long-term outcome is of this. Yeah,
well, this is one we're going to have to watch over time. But talking of time, I'm afraid our hour is up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back Julia and Pat, if I can find Pat.
That was fascinating, Becky. Really interesting.
Thank you. Well, it's hard to follow Julia and Pat, so.
No, that was fascinating.
You did a sterling job. It's been great having you all on the show. We will be back again next week with Beneva Bites, where we're talking to Carney, we're talking to Karen King and Yasmin Mir. And then the week after that, The View from the Top is back with this really important session on diversity and inclusion with a special guest panel. So everybody mark your diaries for Wednesdays. We're here every Wednesday. As I said, we're going to take we are going to take a break in August. Just to remind everybody, these are the codes if you want your credits. But all that remains for me is to thank the audience, and in particular to thank Pat, to thank Julia, and above all to thank our special guest, Becky. It's been wonderful having you on the show. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.